Dr. Carolyn Boxmeyer, thank you so much for joining us again on Health Matters.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
Good to see you. I think the older you get as a parent, the more you want to be a parent to everybody and tell everybody how they ought to do things. But today we're talking about an individual decision that parents have to make regarding electronic devices, not just telephones, but TVs, video games, anything. Is there a top of the mind concern that you have about electronics and when to let young people begin to have them to themselves privately?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're really living in uncharted times because in the last 10 years or so, the number of devices and the types of devices that children and families have access to has just proliferated. So parents really need to be thinking about what they want their children to use and when and how. Mm-hmm. And I think my thinking about it, and with what I read in the research, is that these are tools that have value and are probably here to stay, so they're part of our life. And what our job to do is to really think about how to use them well, and also how much to use them, and what they might take away from if we're using them too much.
The advantages of the devices are obvious. We can say, oh, they can learn, communicate, stay in touch, know what's going on in the world. All of those are positive things. But the downfall is what they might be potentially exposed to before they're ready to be exposed to it. Before we go into those specifics and the things that concern you the most, give us, based on your knowledge, research, or whatever, a general understanding of the appropriate amount of time that a young person should be allowed to spend with a device depending on their age. What's your thinking on that?
Well, one of our best resources on that are some recommendations for children's media use that the American Academy of Pediatrics put out in 2016. And what they recommended is in the first year and a half of life, children's media use should really be limited to simple things like maybe video chatting with grandparents or things of that nature. Then in their next year or two of life, it might be okay to expose them to limited amounts of programming, especially high quality programming that's educational. And one of the points that they make is the importance of watching it together. So not just using television or electronics as a babysitter, but actually spending time watching the program with your child so that you can process it with them afterward. Then in the second and ages 2 to 5, they recommend no more than 1 hour a day of media use. And again, high quality programs and preferably watching it together rather than apart. And then for ages 6 and older, they don't set a specific limit, but they recommend somewhere in the range of no more than 1 to 2 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And importantly, to be consistent as a parent in how you enforce whatever the family's plan is around media use. And then ensure that it doesn't interfere with important things like sleep, physical activity, meaningful face-to-face connection, and other health behaviors as well.
As we listen to you go through those numbers, it's really about control and about making sure you're on the same page and literally the same video screen as your child. If they're on a screen, especially one on a phone where they can go about anywhere they want, you're really putting your child at risk of seeing things long before they should ever be exposed to things.
I think that possibility is there, but the truth is the research is just catching up with the technology. So we're really trying to understand that now with good research. And what we are finding so far is that that what your child is watching or what types of media they're engaging with and how much time they spend doing that and whether they do it alone or together seem to be important.
As a family and as parents make their decisions about cell phones, I know we're talking about a lot of devices, but cell phones are so dominant in our community. Everyone has one, it seems, and at a younger and younger age. Generally, what would be your guidance to someone about the age to begin letting them have a phone, and also dealing with more appropriate things like bedtime? What do you advise? Shouldn't they be shut off before they ever even start to go to bed?
That's one of the consistent things that we're finding in the research, is that they really do affect sleep. And even if we think that we might watch a TV program to relax or surf the internet to relax, that it really does appear to keep us awake longer and to make it harder to really relax towards sleep. So one of the recommendations is to let your devices go to bed before you do. That comes from a book called The Tech Wise Family that's helpful in helping parents think about this. and then to wake up before your devices do. So rather than rolling over and scrolling to check for updates, taking some time to wake up and center yourself for the day before you look at any devices.
Some people are on call, have to have their phones on in case they're called in the middle of the night. Media is one example. Medicine might be another example. But having it on vibrate doesn't guarantee a good night's sleep. It's going to light up, it's going to make a noise and interrupt your sleep many times. That can't be good for you long term.
That's right. It's important that we sleep long enough and get deep sleep to really allow ourselves to rest. So you may have to make exceptions depending on your situation and whether you need to be alerted to an emergency. But finding ways that can happen without really interrupting the opportunity for deep sleep is important.
Sum up for me with a big umbrella coverage of what's your general advice to parents. They have babies or infants and they're going to have to deal with this sooner than they probably know. What's your overall guidance? Would it be getting more information like the book you recommended, talking to physicians? What would you recommend?
Another book recommends, they have a slogan that is easy to remember, and I think it captures what we know from the research so far, which is enjoy screens, not too much, and mostly together. That those are kind of good rules of thumbs to keep in mind as a parent, that screens are tools, they can actually be fun. Watching a humorous video together can be fun as a family, or they're educational programs. So there's no inherent problem with that. It's really a matter of how much of that we do and our children do, and whether we're aware of what they're consuming and processing that together. I think another important thing is what you're modeling as a parent. So most of us adults are quite attached to our phones and other technology too. So also being aware of what we're modeling for our children, and that we're kind of being consistent as a family in how we're approaching our media use.
I was raised on Captain Kangaroo and Ed Sullivan.
Right.
Things have changed, haven't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
Sure have.
I'd love to continue talking to you, but my phone is going off and I need to get to that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.